right, there's a lot going on with UFOs today, so get in here. This is Jack with Cosmic Road. I talk about UFOs and the paranormal. Please hit like and subscribe, and let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Yeah, I thought I'd switch it up a little bit, play with a new format. I'm using StreamYards right now, so we'll see how it goes. Let me know if you like this format any better than the traditional format. But yeah, okay, let's go to share screen, and we are going to go to a really interesting thing. Check it out. All right, share this. And there was a really cool UFO that was filmed the other day, I think on June 25th is actually when it was filmed over Croatia. And it's a really good sighting. So let's check it out. Maybe I can blow that up so I fill the whole screen. There we go. There we go. Now we're talking. Okay, check it out, guys. Let me know what you think about this pretty groovy sighting. Okay, there we go. Look at that. Look at that. That is a weird, anomalous UFO. It doesn't look like anything that I've seen exactly before. Let me know if you've seen anything that matches the shape of this UFO. But I think that's pretty cool and pretty interesting. Very, very different from the UFOs that we're used to seeing. Michael Schratt has talked about the blue smoke phenomenon, and we'll get into that in a minute. But I don't think that's what he was referring to. But let me know what you think in the comments below. Either way, a great sighting. Here is Michael Schratt talking about a really compelling case of in the 50s. And you get this interesting blue smoke phenomenon. So let me go. I think that's probably a good way to do that. A good way to do the screen. All right, here we go. Here is Michael Schratt talking about this really cool case.
Let's continue on. September 1954. John Abazi, Lorain, Ohio, saw this UFO in amazing detail as it dropped from the clouds abruptly and hovered over his car before it shot north across Lake Erie toward Canada. So this is 1954, and this is what he's reporting. So it's got two outer rings turning clockwise, middle ring turning counterclockwise, bubble top blue smoke tint, diameter 120 feet, 50-foot thickness, color dull gray. Interesting. That's interesting. This whole idea about blue smoke, I've heard about this before. This thing is 120 feet in diameter, so it's rather large. This is something bigger. Back in 1954, this is what's being reported here.
So there you go. You have this blue smoke tint. Is that what we just saw in the previous video? Or is that something completely different? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Meanwhile, could this guy, Hans Kammler, the Nazi that is thought to be partly responsible for the Nazi Bell and some other stuff, a particularly bad guy involved in concentration camps. I'm not going to go into it all. But a bad guy who was doing some shady stuff, but also some very possibly esoteric stuff with the Nazis' UFO program or esoteric programs. Could he have gone to work for the U.S.? Was this guy an Operation Paperclip guy, even though he was said to have died back in the day? Well, that's what author Dan Reuter is saying. He is saying that indeed, Kammler came to work for the U.S.
Everybody believed the story of his death. We contacted the U.S. Department of Justice Office of Special Investigations. That's our Nazi hunting group. We contacted the Wiesenthal Center, and we contacted the Mossad, and all of them said, well, no, we never hunted for Hans Kammler. We had limited resources. We had to go after living Nazis. Kammler was dead. So nobody searched for him. But there were two documents we requested from the department. Well, we made a request of the Department of Justice, give us the documents you have on Hans Kammler. And this is a Freedom of Information Act. Probably many of you have heard about it. It's an act you can use to request documents of the government. We got a response back. This was about 7 years ago. And the response was, we have two documents that relate to Hans Kammler, but we can't give you either of them. And what they'll usually do if they can't give you a document, they'll give you, something that looks like this, and a lot of it will be blacked out. but they'll give you something. They'll give you, well, that's a redacted version. But on these, they said, we can't give you even a redacted version. We give you nothing. But we acknowledge we have two documents. One was from 1969, so 25 years after Kamler's dead, and one's from 1987. And they're over 100 pages total. So there's two documents with 100 pages that deal with Kamler, created decades after he's dead, that are in the custody of the U.S. government that they won't produce. So, and then we one clever thing you can do with a FOIA request is years later make the same request and see what happens, because depending on whose desk it lands on, you might get a different response. So we renewed the request about 3 years later, and the response at that point was, we don't have these documents.
Yeah, shocking, right? Yeah, they're deny. And this is one of the documents that they were able to get. Look at that. Yeah, it's just really, really interesting. And this is specifically talking about the underground facilities, because of course he's associated with underground facilities where they were testing the V2 rockets, etc., and also possibly more esoteric alien UFO stuff potentially. I do think the World War II Germans were up to some stuff, and they were working on some very advanced technology, and they may have had help or resources from elsewhere. I think that, I don't know what the real story is. There's so many different versions of that story. I don't know which one is real, but I do think they did have some advanced tech, and there were definitely people like potentially Kamler that had access to some of this advanced tech, and some of those guys went to work for the U.S. In fact, Operation Paperclip was pretty big. There were a lot of scientists that were brought on board in the U.S., and they became embedded in our system. So how much of their knowledge became embedded in our system as well? How much of that laid the groundwork for what we see today? Obviously impossible to tell. Is Hydra real? Was Kamler, the part of all of that? We don't know, but it definitely does look like, based on this research, that Kamler did survive and went to work for the U.S. How many others involved in these operations went to work for the U.S.? Hard to tell. How many of them were as shady as Kamler and involved in some of the dark stuff that he was? Also impossible to know, but very interesting. Claus shares this document. He says Kamler was in U.S. custody. In view of recent scientific developments, it is considered of the utmost importance for future planning and of the highest priority that we obtain all the benefit of the experience of German industry regarding the use of underground facilities. And this is from Brigadier General George McDonald, clearly referencing Kamler and a couple of others, Speer, Kamler, and Sauer, in connection to these underground facilities. I've talked before about some of the research that suggests that the Nazis had a large underground train system connecting some of these facilities. Is that the precursor to the DUMBs, the deep underground military bases that may exist in the U.S. today, and the connection that is said to exist between those bases? Very interesting, and also likely important. Meanwhile, I've been seeing this John Ramirez quote going around the interwebs today. I don't know why this quote is really striking home today, but it seems to be. So I thought I'd share it with you. And of course, you've probably heard it before. But he says, there will be mass panic. But if you understand that these are real, and we have 5 years from 2022, or maybe now 4 years if they come in 2027, if the beings come in 2027, for the U.S. government to prepare the people about what is up there. And in many ways, I think the word got out within the government that they are showing up in 2027, and we better be prepared. And if not, there's going to be a lot of explaining to do. So, who knows if the beings are actually going to show up in 2027? But let me know your thoughts in the comments below. But because I'm seeing this going around the interwebs, fresh, I thought I would share it with you. Meanwhile, check this out from Chaos Moogle. This is when a woman was driving home at night, obviously, and a UFO was dogging her car and actually trying to abduct her as she was driving, according to her. and you can even see the car kind of shake as if the UFO was trying to lift it off the ground. Obviously, impossible to know if this is real or true, but you can kind of see the car shake, and you can hear how scared she is as she's going.
Oh my God.
Well, you can hear Chaos Moogle right now, but I'll link to this. But you look at that. You can see the car like shake. I mean, a lot of that is the camera, but it is a really interesting and scary potential sighting. Meanwhile, people have gone to the crop circle near Stonehenge and have investigated it. I haven't seen anything definitive yet, but I have seen this video. I've been looking for signs of, stalks breaking or something like that. It's hard to tell in this video if there's any like actual damage to the crops or not, because that's one telltale sign of a anomalous crop circle versus a man-made crop circle. So I'll be really curious to see what the ultimate findings are, if this was an anomalous crop circle or not, because it was in an area where there's a lot of scrutiny, right next to Stonehenge, right after it was vandalized. So, definitely take some stones to have done a man-made crop circle, but that could be what it ultimately turns out to be. But, I'll link to this, and you can examine the video at your leisure and let me know if you think there are telltale signs of a man-made circle. Meanwhile, Ross Coulthart says that not only was Sean Kirkpatrick responsible for the latest Arrow report, but also his secret, mysterious advisory board.
Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, the person who created this report, it's alleged by the people I've been talking to that he set out with a preconceived agenda. And I can reveal here tonight that I've found out some of the members of a special secret advisory committee that Dr. Kirkpatrick used to advise him in the preparation of that report. I have their names, I have their roles, I know who they are. They are the gatekeepers, believe it or not, to this legacy program. Mm-hmm. They were quite literally pulling the strings on this Arrow report. And people are so angry, so bitterly angry with this feeble attempt at a cover-up that they are now leaking more assiduously to people like me. And more importantly, whistleblowers are becoming more compelled to come forward and give evidence about what they know.
Awesome. Well, I love that part of it. I don't like the part about the secret, mysterious advisory board pulling the strings of Arrow, and of course of the lovely Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick. We talk about, the lovely Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick leaving Arrow and how that's a good thing. But, who knows? Tim Phillips or whoever comes in next is probably just as bad. But what we don't talk about is that the mysterious advisory board, which contains at least 2 members of the UFO control group, are still there. The advisory board is almost certainly still pulling the strings, so it almost doesn't even matter who the director of Arrow is, if indeed that advisory board is still there. Ross says he knows the names, and I think I've shared a few of those before. Either way, the corruption and the cover-up needs to be exposed, and it needs to stop. Meanwhile, Stephen Greer is saying we need to understand what we are seeing in the skies. Some of it's alien, some of it's not. Now, of course, we all know this, but Stephen Greer's insight could be valuable. Let's give a listen.
There are ET events, there are man-made events, and then there are events that are neither. And those are ones that originate from another dimension, but that are neither strictly extraterrestrial from another planetary system or human. And those are all being conflated together. And this conflation has been done deliberately because in the confusion, people lose their way. And in that chaos, they lose their way. And they don't know which is real, which is from another dimension, but not ET, and which is man-made. And the man-made stuff is so good that it's astonishingly good. I mean, it's good. And I've talked to a number of operations directors who have been on man-made abduction squads who have told me exactly how they operate. And they're really happy for the UFO community to then report that out as an actual alien event. But he says it's not hard to figure out the difference. If you see an object at close range and there are parts to it, it's man-made. If you see a gray or some creature like that that's moving very robotically like this towards you, that's man-made. I know where they make them. I know what's in their neural complexes. I know the men who designed them, and they're nano-bio machines.
Okay, yeah, I don't know about all that, Stephen Greer. Stephen says a lot of stuff, but I do think that it's important to keep in mind that a lot of this stuff is man-made. The control group has stuff, absolutely 100%. They do have stuff. There are Me Labs abductions, the military abductions, which seems to be centered around trying to understand what the beings are doing, the genuine beings. The military guys will abduct experiencers, abductees, contactees, people who are often or who are already being abducted. They will abduct those, poor guys, or, if they see it as a positive thing, then there you go. But they will take those people and then they will interrogate them to find out what the being's technology is and what the beings are doing. So it's some like the Me Lab seems to be an intelligence operation designed to understand the phenomenon better, or if the Me Labs is working on behalf of the UFO control group, which is possible, although it gets kind of weird. I'll explain why. Because the Me Labs guys, they do use alien technology. They use very advanced non-human technology, and they are capable of some of or a lot of the things that the beings themselves are capable of. And the UFO control group seems to be working with some beings against other beings, shooting down UFOs of other beings. So it would be weird if the My Labs guys, is it Me Labs or My Labs? If the My Labs guys were interrogating people that had been abducted by the UFO control group allies, the non-human allies. So either the Me Labs guys are a separate group and they're trying to get intelligence on the beings associating with the UFO control group, or else it is a different race that possibly the beings that the UFO control group is shooting at that they are trying to get intelligence on. So if Me Labs is associated with the UFO control group, then they must be getting intelligence on the UFO race that they are shooting at, you would think, right? I mean, that makes sense. But I mean, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Who knows, guys? But if Me Labs is a separate group with its own technology and a rogue organization or a separate organization, they may be trying to find out what the beings that are associating with the control group are up to. So hard to know which is which, what's going on. Either way, it's not great. My Labs guys, there's tales of abuse that I've reported on in the past that they seem to be involved in. They're not great guys. So anyway, but I think what Stephen Greer says is important to understand that there are a lot of UFOs that are indeed man-made. He goes on to talk about, there's no alien abductions. And, when you see an alien, that's man-made as well. I don't buy that. But, hey, let me know what you think in the comments below. Meanwhile, guys, check this out. Ants perform life-saving operations. The only animal other than humans known to do so. Check this out, guys. This is amazing. Ants in Florida perform life-saving surgery on their peers, scientists have discovered. They are only the second animal in the world known to do this, along with humans. The researchers found that Florida carpenter ants identify limb wounds on their nestmates, then treat them with either cleaning or amputation. The team published its findings Tuesday, July 2nd in the journal Current Biology. When we're talking about amputation behavior, this is literally the only case in which a sophisticated and systematic amputation of an individual by another member of its species occurs in the animal kingdom. Yeah, that's crazy, guys. Carpenter ants perform surgery. Who knew? Meanwhile, check this out, guys. From 1952, Einstein disclaims any curiosity about flying saucers. Reverend Lewis A. Gardner of LA wanted to know what the greatest scientist in the world had to say about flying saucers. The evangelist wrote to Dr. Albert Einstein, asking him whether the saucers originate in outer space, come from Mars or Venus, or if they are the products of our military rivals or of U.S. Air Force experiments. The famous scientist answered in a letter received today, "Dear sir, those people have seen something. What it is, I do not know. I am not curious to know. Sincerely yours, Albert Einstein." I thought that was really interesting. He is saying that there is a phenomenon and people are seeing some stuff. So that's reassuring. But the fact that he says he's not curious, I don't buy it all. We now know that Einstein was brought in to study UFOs. So I think that he is unfortunately obligated to lie about it. That seems to be the case. If you're read into a program, you are now obligated to lie about it. So at least he's saying, hey, these guys are seeing something real, but he's not going to express any opinion or any interest on it. So he's kind of, threading a very fine line there. He's not allowed to say what he knows or, anything like that. But he can say that these people have seen something. So I think that's reassuring that he at least was able to go that far. But it's dismaying that people brought in to study UFOs can't talk about it. Last but not least, if your kid is in a daze, just bring in an elephant. Check it out, guys. The kid's just staring off into space. That got her attention. Let me know what you think about this method of waking people up in the comments below and everything else covered today. And let me know what you think about this new format, if this works for you or not. Let me know, thumbs up. If you wanted to support Cosmic Road in a bigger way, grab a coffee mug or a t-shirt in the merch store below. Become a channel member. Channel members are rock stars, and I really appreciate you guys' support. Thank you so much. Meanwhile, there are plenty of other videos on the channel, and I'll see you guys next time. This is Jack with Cosmic Road, signing out.